Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speedrun Insider. I'm your host, CJitsallGewd. Joining me this week, very special guest, someone that I've wanted to have on the show since we started the show. Schedules be damned and all that. It just, even during a pandemic, it's hard to get two people in the same room to record a podcast. In two different rooms. Two distinct different rooms at the same time. Different place, same time. You may have seen him at any of the multiple marathons he's been in, from NASA to Speedrun and about a dozen, I'm sure, in between. He's known for running Harry Potter and his popular Harry Potter cosplay incentive at those aforementioned marathons. And he's even the host of his own podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. His name is Conception. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. What an intro.
Hey, listen, I try and hype people up, man. I'm like selling tickets to the circus.
I think that's a compliment.
It is. No, you're like one. Okay, well, maybe I should rephrase. I'm like selling tickets to a classy event.
Oh, yes, a classy event. That's where I belong. So now I know you're for real.
Yeah, you're not JoJo the dog-faced boy. You're Conception, the man above the title, right?
Yeah. I guess that's how I would put it too, or how I'm going to put it going forward.
On your business card, next to roadside corn sailor proprietor, it'll say the man above the title, a Conception above all else.
I don't know how you got a hold of my IRL job, but that's amazing.
Hey, listen, this is gonna be a good time. So since I've butchered your actual intro and who you are, why don't you tell the people who you are yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Conception. Conception 2 is the full handle with the number because Conception was taken. I'm a speedrunner. Obviously, that's why I'm here. I have gained most of my popularity, like CJ said, through speedrunning the handheld Harry Potter games specifically. Haven't done really anything with consoles and things like that. But I also do speedrun other games. I speedrun Gen 1 Pokemon games. I also speedrun Grim Fandango, if you're familiar with that game. And I'm continuing to develop my repertoire as we go on.
Yes, this is all true. I'd be remiss. I feel like you're burying the lead a little bit. The game that you mainly speedrun, the one that people would know you best for, is Cartoon Summer Resort.
Oh, yes. I'm so happy that you brought that up because I would love to talk about Cartoon Summer Resort at length.
Oh, absolutely. We're going right off the rails, but I'm all about it, man. We're going to steer into the skid. I think that game is so interesting, and the idea of a speedrun kind of like lost in time almost, right? Because it's a Flash game.
Yeah, very much so. It's a Flash game. It's actually a Flash Shockwave game, even more specifically. And it's a Flash Shockwave game from the Cartoon Network website in the year 2000 or 2001, I believe was the couple years that it was on there for. So lost in time indeed.
Yeah, I know that there are some. I don't know what you would. I forget what you call them. Flash preservation efforts. Like Flashpoint is one of them.
That's the one I use, yeah.
So is that gonna make it somewhat viable for the game to continue on, or is it really gonna be kind of like after this is all over?
No, I think because of a program like Flashpoint by Blue Maxima, that is what is going to breathe life into some of these speedruns. Obviously, these are games from our childhood, for me at least. Games that we experienced a lot when we were younger, when we didn't have the money to afford consoles all the time. This is where you were able to get your gameplay out. So that's kind of why I glommed onto this game when I wanted to get a new speed game, because it was something that was such a key part of my childhood growing up, and I didn't have every game console when I grew up, so I had to get my gaming out somewhere.
Yeah, I have to say, when we did the schedule for Speedoxathon, this game was in Speedoxathon, albeit it had a little bit of a scheduling snafu, but no one remembers that. Everyone remembers the run itself, because I have to tell you, so many people messaged me and were like, I loved this game. I played it the hell out of it when I was a kid. And I'm like, this game? You played the hell out of this game? Like
Yep.
I'm like, you're on a beach, you're like gathering food, and then you're discoing, and the way that your VOD had it set up was that all the games were little windows next to each other. So
Yeah.
it was like a window pane, almost like a 4 square window. And I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I kind of regret. So originally when I started learning this game, I wanted to be able to do it as fast as possible. When you do it on Flashpoint, each of the games are set up in separate. There's 4 levels, but each level is considered its own separate game. If you played it on the website back in the day, you would just click next level to move on to the next game. But because Flashpoint doesn't have them linked that way, I wanted to be able to switch to games as fast as possible. Originally, I just put all 4 on the screen. I kind of regret doing it that way. That's what the world record is set up like.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back and grind it down a little bit more. It's pretty optimized with the current route, but I currently run it with 1 window open at a time, and then I just have it set up to when I close mission 1, mission 2 starts.
Yeah. We're hearing some input from Jabba.
Oh, you got the name even. Wow, look at that. Yeah, that's Jabba in the background. He wanted to make his podcasting debut.
You know, like I'm some 2-bit disc jockey here that doesn't do research. Like I don't have 5,000 Conception coins that I'm gonna redeem to give Jabba treats.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, that's probably the one of the top used most rewards on my channel is either just putting him on the camera or giving him a treat on the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. He showed up the other day when I was watching, and I was like, "Dog, literal dog. I am gonna hook you up, man. You know, I have made plenty of pets gain a few pounds because I just happen to sit in people's streams that I'm just giving away treats."
Oh yeah, and for all the people who are listening too, this is a pug we're talking about, so he already has pounds to lose, but we're gonna keep putting him on with the treats.
He's gonna be a meatloaf with 4 toothpicks for legs.
Yeah, we call him a baked potato all the time.
That's such a succinct name for it too. Just a little pug, right?
Yep, it's perfect.
Man, so I do want to kind of pull it back a little bit. That was Cartoon Summer Resort had a lot of, it has like a cult following almost because so many people reacted so positively. As a part of us talking about that, you talked about like, you know, in your early days, you didn't have every console that there was and everything. And I think a lot of people are in that same boat. So I guess I'm curious, like, what were the games that you played when you were a kid? And what were your first games and what were your entries into, I guess not speedrunning, but just what were your first games that you really remember you played the hell out of?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned not necessarily speedrunning because you're going to notice there's a lot of overlap here because as somebody who speedruns, a vast majority of the games I speedrun are based off of games that I loved as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So the games that I really grew up with handheld systems mainly. I had some console systems, but not until I got a little bit older. So I was a Game Boy Color kid. I was playing Pokemon regularly. Every Pokemon version you could find, I was trying to get my hands on it. I played the Harry Potter Game Boy Color games, which they only made 1 and 2 for Game Boy Color. Then as systems advanced, they made some other editions of the games and stuff too. Any Game Boy game I could get a hand. I played the Little Mermaid handheld game. I loved that game as a kid. Just whatever I could get my hands on until I got the N64. Then I was, getting involved with Pokemon Snap and Super Smash and things like that as well.
Yeah. Hey, Pokemon Snap is a game that I speedrun.
Ooh, yeah. It's like I've done my research.
There you go, man. Hey, we are both prepared in our own specific ways.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. I love hearing you talk about Pokemon. I love hearing you talk about the Harry Potter games. I do want to kind of touch on, because you said they only made 2 for the Game Boy Color. And we had Starlight Sims, also a friend of a show. He did 2 runs at Speedoxathon, and one of the runs that he did was the Game Boy Advance version of the Philosopher's Stone.
Correct, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And speaking freely, because I think it's an interesting game. I think it's an interesting run, but the Game Boy Color version is infinitely cooler
Way
in the
cooler.
most bizarre way. What is that?
Well,
Why is that?
Well, here's what it is for me. So, kind of relating, as you could probably tell with my love of Pokemon and other games of that nature, I'm a big turn-based RPG fan. The Game Boy Color versions of 1 and 2 are turn-based RPGs, kind of in the style of Final Fantasy, mixed with little bits of Pokemon and things like that. So that's what really drew me to those games. I wanted a mixture of my Final Fantasy, my Pokemon, with my Harry Potter. That's why I think those versions of the games are probably the best Harry Potter games they have made, even to current. So those are my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. The Game Boy Advance one, if you guys, I mean, I recommend checking it out because Starlight Sims does a really great job at commentary. And he actually makes it interesting. But it's kind of like a platformer almost in a weird way. It's like there's all these moving platforms you have to ride. I'm like, I don't remember Harry Potter riding all these moving platforms.
The Harry Potter, especially the first two, so Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, it's such an interesting game development time because both of those both of those games under those title, they each have 5 different versions made by different developers that are all distinctly different from each other. It's very strange. So there's the Game Boy Color, you got the Game Boy Advance, 2 different games, not the same game at all. Then you got PC, then you got PS1, different from each other. And then as they went into 6th gen, which is PS2, GameCube, Xbox, they made another game. And they're all different. They all have different, they follow the same story, but they all have different gameplay mechanics and puzzles and things like that.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting to me that there's so many version differences because that's something that just doesn't happen anymore. You know?
Yeah, no, not like that.
Maybe Call of Duty when they make the DS version. Obviously, that's not going to be a robust first-person shooter, but yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's crazy.
So those are the games they end up playing as a kid casually. They are the core of what you ended up speedrunning at first. I guess what I'm interested in is how did you discover speedrunning? Like, what was your kind of entry point?
For sure, yeah. So I started streaming in roughly 2016, probably like the March or April around that time. And I started streaming because right around then it was about to be the re-release of Red, Blue, and Yellow on the 3DS. And I was trying to wait for those games to come out, but I found that I couldn't really wait. So I wanted to stream, and I wanted to stream some Pokemon games on my stream. So that's what I started with. I was just doing casual playthroughs. I had like a couple people pop in here and there, one of which was a speedrunner. He's not active in the community anymore. I haven't seen him around in a while, but he recommended to me that, hey, maybe I should try looking at speedrunning Pokemon Red, which is what I was playing at the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, I'll take a look at, what's involved in that. I watched some speedruns of it, and I was just blown away by how fast you could clear this game. Games that have taken me hours, even, having played through them 6 or 7 times at this point, they'd taken me hours to play, and now they're crushing them in under 2 hours. And there's all this new tech coming out with RNG manipulation and things like that. I was just fascinated by it. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, slowly started peeling it back with Pokemon Red. And then I'm still running it to this day, but there was probably about a 2-year gap when I was working. And then we actually ended up moving from the Northeast down to Florida, where I didn't really stream at all. And I picked it back up when we moved back down here to Florida, started up with that game again, and just tried to get my time down as much as I could. And then kind of started self-reflecting, like, I love this game. What other games do I love? What I want to put, thousands of hours into? And there are games that I've already put hundreds of hours into because they're games that I love. So I started looking at Cartoon Summer Resort, and I started looking at Harry Potter 1 for Game Boy Color. And those are the things that kind of snowballed into now I run 6, 7, 8 games and counting, because I have plans on the horizon to run more. So
yeah, absolutely. So you kind of, do you know the timeline, like when you first started streaming to the speedrun, what year that was?
Yeah, so I started streaming in March, April of 2016. I probably started speedrunning Pokemon Red in June. I would say, of that same year. So I played casually for like a month or two, started speedrunning in June, but then I probably from October 2016 till last June, so like June 2019 rather, is when I didn't stream at all, or if I did stream, it was like casual stuff here and there, no speedruns. Picked speedrunning back up last June.
Awesome. Yeah. It's so interesting. Everyone has different stories of how they started. There are so many stories of people who get into it because they watch Siglemic on Twitch, right? And he's destroying Super Mario 64. There's so many people that watch now Narcissa Wright, her famous AGDQ run of The Legend of Zelda, right? Or that famous like OG Legend of Zelda 100% route run, which was like a 457, which blew everyone's mind. It's like, oh my god. And so many people that I talk to have those as their entry points. What I think is interesting about you is that your story more closely resembles mine, in that I was streaming casual stuff, and that someone was like, hey, people speedrun this, and I'm like, how the hell do you speedrun whatever I was playing? I was playing like Star Fox 64. I'm like, how the hell do you speedrun this? Like, you just boost the whole time? That doesn't sound like fun. It's like, what the hell? Why would anyone do that? And then I'm like, oh my god, no, this game is actually really hard to go fast in. It's always the games that you think, how do you go fast in this? That it's like, oh, shaving a second is going to be torture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating that you bring that up, that we have this in common, because, like, we both started streaming casually. We were introduced to speedrunning by somebody who was watching us rather. And for me, I was not anybody who watched people stream really back then. Like, I didn't really go on Twitch to watch people stream. But when I started learning Pokemon Red and I wanted to get better, I needed to watch people who stream the game get better and watch them and learn from them. So I started to pop into people's streams to learn about their techniques. Then I would start asking them the questions. Then I would develop friendships. And now I have this whole array of people who speedrun various games because I was curious. But now I'm so glad that I have done that, because I have made infinitely more friends than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hearing you tell me your story. I'm hearing so much of my story, right? Because then I eventually found Pokemon Snap, and that's where I met most of my friends, right? So it's just like so crazy. And before anyone asks me, how do you speedrun an on-rail shooter? It's like, okay, there's like 3 history videos about it, buddy. Go check it out.
Yeah, if there's a game, you could speedrun it, and it can go faster than you think it can.
Yeah, that's a really good rule of thumb. It's just like, okay, can a game be speedrun? Yes. I think they've got Barney's hide and seek down to like a frame input.
Yeah, the task is the same as the world record, I think.
Yeah, I love things like that. I actually made the mistake of saying that to a tasser the other day, like, oh, it's like the Minesweeper world record. He's like, actually, that was just beaten recently. I was like,
yeah,
are you fucking kidding me?
It was held for like 10 years and it just got beaten.
Yeah, right? Because someone just wants to grind Minesweeper. But that's people, man. People are into it.
Yep.
All right. Was there anything else I wanted to ask you about the games that you speedrun? You also mentioned Grim Fandango.
Yeah.
I remember I asked you what Grim Fandango was because we had someone drop out during the marathon, and I was looking for anybody with a pulse.
Yeah, I remember.
Can you run anything? What else you got? Let me look. And unfortunately, people were very giving with their time and very generous and very open to helping me. But I had basically bled a lot of people who were open dry. I've used all their games. Well, I don't have another 30-minute run. So I had never watched a run of Grim Fandango until I'm on the edge of my seat, sprinting, looking around. And you told me you speedrun Grim Fandango. I was like, okay, let me watch this. So during my marathon, when I should be watching the event, and I'm having this crisis, I sat down and watched your speedrun of it. So tell the people a little bit about that game, because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that one, Grim Fandango, is a fascinating game, and this is a speedrun I picked up not too long ago. I probably only have ran it maybe 2 months. It's pretty recent for me. But if you're not familiar with what Grim Fandango is as a game, it's a game made by LucasArts in the 90s. It's a kind of point and click adventure game. What it is about is you play this person, Manny Calavera is his name. He's actually a skeleton who works in the afterlife as sort of a travel agent. And he's a travel agent shepherding people from the land of the living to the dead. But it's based off of your status as you lived. If you lived a really good life and you were a really good person, you'll get the like class A package, that you get the golden bullet train straight to heaven, basically. You just cut right to the end. But if you were kind of a bad person in life, you have to walk through the lands of the dead. It takes 4 years to get from where you start to the gates of the afterlife. So it's a story about somebody who comes into Manny's office who lived a wonderful life, but for some reason got the worst travel package possible. And Manny knows that there's something wrong with this, so he decides to look into it. And he actually ends up going on this 4-year journey himself, trying to save this poor woman's life. It's a fascinating game. It's goofy. The art style is kind of bonkers, really. And they made a remaster of it back in 2015, and that's the game I've been running as the remaster version. But the gameplay is not different at all. It's literally the same. I could probably submit my run as an OG Grim Fandango run if I made sure that the graphics were set to original instead of remastered, because it doesn't matter at all. But as a speed run, there's some tech. Obviously, it's making sure the routing is as tight as possible in terms of optimizing your movement. That's with any speedrun, though. We also utilize cutscene skips, animation skips. You'll notice that when we pick up items, we're trying to put them away and move at the same time, which is not what the game is designed to do, but you just kind of glide across the ground as if it were made of ice or something like that, in order to save those frames of movement and stuff like that. If it's a game you haven't played casually, play it casually. You can literally get it on any console. It's on Switch, PS4, Xbox, PC. It's usually on sale for like $5, $6, $7. It's super cheap. Everyone should play it and just live that story, because when you see a speedrun, you get zero of the story. We skip like every dialogue and every cutscene, basically. So
yeah, absolutely. I actually was looking at it, and it looks like the old version looks pretty fucking good for 1998. Excuse my French. It looks pretty dang good for a game from 98. The remaster looks pretty good too. I think it's just the art style,
Yeah, it's really unique. It kind of reminds me of like, almost like if you're familiar with the art, Salvador Dali style. It's just like hard edges and things like that. Very, very unique art style that people should really check out. It's kind of like a visual novel in a way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about Harry Potter, and I want to talk to you about another franchise that is pretty popular that we both have an interest in, which is Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because I was like, man, I really have a hard time getting into the Harry Potter stuff. I've seen those movies a billion times because my sisters and my mom watch them every weekend when they're on the TV. And I've seen like the same part of like 3, 4, 5, and 6 like over and over again. I see the same parts. Man, if I see friggin' Lupin and Sirius Black and the Shrieking Shack one more damn time, like, I'm just gonna burst. I know that scene backwards and forwards. It's lost all nuance to me.
Yep.
And like, I am such a huge Lord of the Rings fan, it actually hurts me. It actually hurts me. I feel like there's really not a lot of great Lord of the Rings games.
There isn't. So there are some good ones. Don't get me wrong. There are some gems. I'm of the camp that the Return of the King game that they made for consoles is pretty good. I like that game quite a bit. There's also the Third Age, which is also pretty good. I would love to speedrun the Third Age, but I don't have time. That speedrun is like 4.5 hours. It's super long. But that would, if I had to pick a Lord of the Rings game to speedrun myself, that would be the one. Just because I played that game when I was a kid. I loved it. But we need some high quality Lord of the Rings games. I'm hoping this Gollum game that they have announced that's coming out sometime in the next year or two or whenever is pretty good, because I'd love to play that one.
Yeah, like if you think about it, There is no universe that is just fleshed out with like maps and like to scale maps and different languages and everything. Like it just has so much. You have so much content. Give me a game, like I would take if it was Death Stranding, but it was in Middle Earth. That game would have been infinitely better.
You're carrying a ring instead of a baby.
Yeah,
or whatever
right?
it is. I didn't play
Yeah.
Death Stranding. I don't know what it is. But
You're like carrying all your stuff on you. Like you got this big backpack kind of thing. It gets to be taller than you are. And it's like a walking simulator, but the ground is all messed up. Can you imagine a game where you had to walk from the Shire to, Mordor? I would love that. Even if it was like whatever, I think that would be so great. Make it a VR game or something. I'm giving people $1 million ideas, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say both of those ideas, both the Shire to Mount Doom and the VR version of that would be day one purchases for me. That's like I don't even own a VR headset, but I'd buy a VR headset to play that game.
To get to explore Middle Earth, to get to like go through and like go through the Mirkwood forests and like, man, like be like, oh, you're at the Council of Elrond, and like, oh no, you're in Gondor, where it's like, this is Helm's Deep. Can you actually imagine? Also, I know that there's gonna be somebody who's gonna message me, because people don't comment; they message me directly, because that's how comfortable they feel with me.
Wow, I guess you must be blessed.
Oh, I'm very blessed. But they're gonna message me and tell me, but CJ, Shadow of War, whatever, Shadow of Mordor. I'm like, no, it's not the same. It's all the way in like forever ago.
Yeah, we want the game that takes place in the Tolkien years that we're familiar with. Yeah. It's really cool. Like I love the concept of like the First Men and stuff like that, and how far back those two games go. But I would love to experience the story that I'm most familiar with in a game format that benefits really well from it. Would be awesome. That's what I want.
Yeah, or have events that I know what they are. Like have a war that ends with the battle of like the ending of the First Alliance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just like okay, yep, Isildur's the ring, cuts the ring off, and then it goes in the river, and then blah blah blah, and then Schmeagol, and then you're moved on.
Now, one game I haven't played in the Lord of the Rings pantheon of games, but I've heard is pretty good, is the Lord of the Rings online RPG game. I haven't played it, but I've heard decently good things.
I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm gonna take your word for it. I'm gonna look into it after this podcast, but I can't get hurt again.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt you too much. Yeah, just go in cautiously optimistic, I guess.
Yeah, even like I think there was a Hobbit game that was kind of based on that animated version of the Hobbit, like the creepy one.
GDQ actually had it. What was it, like 2 years ago now? Somebody ran it at a GDQ. I forget. Yeah, I don't remember if it was AGDQ or SGDQ, but they ran it. I think it was like 2 years ago, and that was a fascinating run.
Yeah, no, for sure. It had definitely had speedrun potential. All right, enough talking about Lord of the Rings. I don't get
you
to
sure?
Dude, I would talk to you about Lord of the Rings all day. I really would, but the show must go on.
Okay, if you say so.
The people came here for speedrun questions, doggone it.
All right.
Well, we did talk a little bit in the beginning about marathons. Man, you are in a lot of marathons. I know you're telling me that you're not. You took a break. It's like, you've been in a few marathons in your time.
Well, let's break it down this way, because you're talking to me about, how I pop up in marathons a lot before we started recording. So like I said, I started streaming again, maybe last May or June. So a little over a year, like a year and a half. My first marathon run I've ever done was for Mid-Fall Speedball 2019. So little less than a year ago, almost exactly a year. That was my first marathon run ever.
Right.
Since then, I think I've done 25 marathon runs.
This is what I'm talking about. This is why you're the marathon man.
I love doing it. it's such a unique way to showcase games that you love. And for me, a vast majority of the games that I run, excluding Pokemon, because that's like one of the highest run games there is, a vast majority of the games that I run don't have a community behind them, or they don't have a huge community behind them. So I always have such a huge passion of showcasing these games that aren't run enough, putting them out there for people to see, getting enthusiasm behind them. I love when people tell me, oh, I loved this game as a kid. It's like my favorite thing to hear, because then I can relate to that. And then I can kind of tie it into, hey, well, if you like it, we're trying to get more people to run this game. You know, come on aboard. So I just love, whenever I can, showcasing the games that I love. And a vast majority of these marathons are done to raise money for a charity that it's just such a good idea. Why would I not use my speedrunning abilities to help somebody else? Like, it's a no-brainer thing. I'm going to do it as much as I possibly can until I collapse.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I had any modicum of speedrunning talent, I may feel
don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short.
All right, let me sell myself shorter. I would be denying someone a spot if someone ever accepted my speedruns of choice. I'm an awful speedrunner. I speedrun like Mario Party. No one wants to watch 6 hours of that.
I would. I like it.
Oh, thanks, bud. All right, so 25. We had someone on not that long ago who said that they did 45 during the COVID months, and I was like, how? When do you even have time? I don't have time. I didn't have time to do one event.
Yeah, and I don't know. I thought I did a lot until you just said that. So
because you are in so many, I think you've kind of made yourself a staple, and it's almost like comfort food. I really want to see you in the marathons. It feels weird when I don't see you in the marathon. You were one of the people that I actually was going to reach out to when submissions opened, and you submitted before I could get to you.
Yeah, well, we talked about Starlight Sims on the podcast. He actually was the one who told me that you guys were getting ready to make an event. This was before you had like opened submissions and everything like that. And he told me that you guys were looking for some like Harry Potter runs and other things. And I was like, oh, awesome! I'm definitely going to submit to that. He sent me the link the day you all opened, and I applied right away because I was like, oh, I want to be part of this easy.
Yeah, it's so funny. There are some people who I really wanted to submit, but I couldn't actually get a hold of them because we didn't share a mutual server on Discord, or they require you to be friends to message them, or their Discord or their Twitter DMs are closed. I had seen you at NASA doing the first Game Boy Color Harry Potter.
Yep.
And you had done the cosplay. And I was in chat the whole time being like, this game is way cooler and a really awesome speedrun. It is way cooler than it has almost any right to be.
I get that a lot with those games.
It is a game based on a movie for the Game Boy. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is like almost a thing frozen in time. Movie games are never good.
Nope.
Like, ever. This is like an exception to a rule, and then to have it be an interesting speed run on top of that. That is even more rare.
Yeah, especially that first one. That first one has a lot of speed tech in it. More than you would ever think is possible. But that first one has so many glitches, so many skips. It's like a really satisfying game to run. It's a perfect mixture of RNG and tech. It's like I haven't found a game like it that scratches the itch like that yet.
In even this, you start off and you have everyone's attention because you're like, all right, so right at the beginning, we're going to be doing something where we're trying to manipulate this frog thing. So we get all the things, and we're on the train, and we need one encounter in this room. We got the one encounter. Okay, if we don't get it, I'm going to safety save, so we get it. And I'm like, I apologize to everyone listening. I did a horrible job explaining it. But it's such a great event thing.
Yeah.
That gets everyone into it. Because it's like, things are happening right now. Some games, it's like, all right, you're just going to play this part casually. You're going to play this part casually. We're going to do a sequence break in 45 minutes. If you have any donations for the next hour, now would be a good time.
Yep. That game has I think it's 3 key glitches in the first 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do such a great job of explaining everything. It's just like I said, you in a marathon setting, that's like soul food, man.
Oh,
If you're out there planning an event, and there are some people that you just need to have in your event because one, they raise the cachet because they're just professionals, And I will say that with working with you in a marathon setting, you were just an absolute pro.
oh, thank you. You're just my self-confidence is through the roof right now.
I worked with a lot of people to make Speed Docs-thon happen, and some of them never showed up and gave me zero notice. Now that's gonna happen no matter what, but it does make you appreciate all of the people that do what they're supposed to do. They get the JSON package because that's what we did. We had scenes that we had made, and we did the copy transforms. We're getting a little into the technical side now, but we didn't send people like layouts of PNGs. We had made scenes in OBS that worked for like 98% of people. There was 2 people that it didn't work for. And most people got that. Most people read the runner's guide. Most people's audio was already good. And so you really learn to appreciate the people who are just professional. And it's like, okay, is this guy playing a bigger game? Or is he, he's going to play OOT? And I'm not talking about Lake, because Lake is also a pro. So love you, Lake. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking like, oh, this guy is 108th on the leaderboard, and he's gonna do Ocarina of Time. Okay, he's gonna do like a 2-hour game, but he's a pain in the ass to work with. And after doing a marathon, you want as few of those people as possible.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I work on staff for a couple marathons, and or I volunteer for others, so I know exactly what you mean. The people who show up, who have it ready, who are there like, hey, I know I'm early, but I'm ready to set up whenever you are. You just love those people.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you're on staff for a few events. Which events are those?
Yeah, so I'm currently on staff for the No Glitches Allowed crew, but they do No Glitches Allowed, they do Complete-a-thon, they do Yes Glitches Allowed, and then they do No Holidays Allowed. So they do 4 events a year. And then I also regularly volunteer for other marathons like the Midwest Speed Fest cruise, 4 events in the year. I volunteered for a couple of other marathons once or twice. The main one that I'm the most proud of recently, though, was I was the head organizer on an event called Trans Rights Are Magical Marathon. It was a brand new event that we did this year, and we streamed on the Fast Forces Twitch channel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was an event, and we'll probably end up talking a little bit more about this later as we go on. But that was an event that was a purely Harry Potter speedrunning marathon that raised money for Trans Lifeline, which I was just very proud of.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. I want to get to this because it ties into a larger conversation I want to have with you. But one last thing about the marathon thing.
Sure.
What was your best marathon experience that you've had as a runner? Like, are
we talking run or experience?
Well, like the whole package.
Okay, whole package. Okay.
You can if you want to go one way or the other. I'm not going to split hairs.
Okay, so I talked about how my first marathon run was for Mid-Fall Speedball. That was a 4-way Pokemon race. That was a great one. My second ever marathon was a few months later, and it was ESA Winter 2020 this past February. That's an in-person event in Sweden. I talked at the top that I live in Florida. So I flew to Sweden, and I ran Harry Potter 1, and I ran Pokemon Red. And I did Harry Potter 1 first the day we landed. We had been up probably 24 hours between flights. We had a layover in Germany. We then flew from Germany to Denmark, and then we had to take a train from Denmark to Sweden. And I've been up 24 hours. I ran there. I finished, I don't know, like 12 minutes underestimate or something like that. I thought I was like, I'm going over. I'm gonna fall asleep on the stream. Like it's gonna be miserable. But you get there, and this is still to date because of the nature of the COVID-19 landscape. This is still to date the only in-person event that I've done because everything else has been online since. But something about an in-person event with the crowd behind you and just the energy in the room. I got to do the Harry Potter cosplay for that one too. It got met literally like the second I started the timer. So we stopped the timer. I threw the clothes on real quick, and then I started the timer again. Just something about that really, really captured why I do marathons, and it's just something I want to continue to pursue that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I did not know that you went to Sweden. What'd you think of Sweden?
Oh, it's a beautiful country. Ah, man. Like I was so torn when we were there because I wanted to obviously see all these excellent runs and runners that we have there. But Denmark and Sweden are just beautiful countries. And we just ended up touring a lot of like the, just natural landscape stuff and, touristy stuff. This is the first time I'd ever left America ever. I've never traveled even to like Mexico or Canada or anything like that. So this was my first non-American experience, and we meaning me and my fiance just made the best of it. It was just a blast.
Yeah, awesome, man. All right, I'm gonna ask. You don't have to answer. I told you I was gonna ask you.
Yep.
What was your worst marathon experience? What was like the event was like either awful or the run was awful or there was technical difficulties? Like, what was your worst marathon experience?
I say this with full sincerity that every marathon that I've ever run in has been really good. Not every run that I've done has been good, but like the organization behind the marathons has been excellent. I love all of the organizations. The one run that sticks out to me was, and this might not count, so you tell me if this counts or not, but last year I was in the Pokemon Red Any% Glitchless tournament. Not really marathon, but there were 60 entrants, we were all running. And I had practiced for, I don't know, like 2 months straight, just doing no reset runs, trying to practice as much as I can. And I get there, I do the tournament race. I'm about 45 minutes in, and then I just had this brutal death that knocked me all the way back. I'd have to walk, minutes behind. Like there was no chance I was going to come anywhere close to finishing the race. I'd be 5, 6, 7 minutes behind everybody else. I ended up forfeiting because I couldn't muster the energy to continue going with that, knowing I'd be so far behind everybody, and I didn't want to keep everyone back. Right. So that one was probably my worst experience, but I've learned a lot since then. So,
well, I'm gonna accept it because you're a nice guy, and I'm not gonna make you tell on anyone. That's a very good PR answer you gave.
Yeah,
wink.
no PR answer. Like for real, these anyone, you just have to think with all these marathons. These are people who are volunteering their time. No one is getting paid to do this. Just, between all the marathons that I've run through, hundreds of people just volunteering weeks of their time or weekends of their time or however long the event is, just to make sure that it goes successful. So you raise money for a charity. It's just, when you care that much to do something for free, you have something special there. So the groups are involved are awesome. Now I've had some bad runs. Like one of the, I did, in my marathon, my Trans Rights Are Magical marathon, I ran Harry Potter 3 for the Game Boy Advance, and it was pretty much, how, you might have submitted for marathons and stuff in the past. They tell you for your estimate, make your estimate like the worst case scenario. If everything went wrong in your run, what would the time be? And make that your estimate. And I did that. It was an hour 30. And I finished with like an hour 29 in seconds because I got like everything bad that could possibly happened. And, when you're on that set, you just have to smile. You can't just be, when you're on your own stream, you can tilt a little. But when you're trying to raise money for a charity, you don't want to be tilting there.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I died again. Okay.
Yeah, that was a 3-minute time loss. That's okay, though. Let's just move on.
Yeah, Ron out here throwing curveballs.
Exactly. So that was a pretty bad run, but like I said, the people behind it can't be beat. So,
well, there you go. I'll take that answer. I won't try and drag it out anymore.
Well, I gave you 2. I gave you
yes,
Harry Potter. I gave you Pokemon. You got options.
I am a very cynical person. Well, no, I'm a very optimistic person, but I also know that people are sometimes trash, and so I never put it past people to be like randomly like, oh man, these people really screwed the pooch. However, I will say, now that I just called all humans trash, that some of the nicest people I've ever met was while I was doing charity work. So
Exactly. Yeah, it takes a special person.
it does take a special person. And speaking of special person, we are talking about trans rights are magical. We are talking about Harry Potter, and so for those of you that are not aware, I'm gonna kind of preface this for you so that you can just kind of go into your thing. You don't have to set it up too much. J.K. Rowling is out here, and she's saying a lot of things which are, I think, a lot of people are correctly interpreting them as transphobic, and this too, what she's saying is kind of harmful. It's beyond like transphobia. It's like a step beyond to like, okay, this is actually like this could harm this group of people.
Yep.
Right? And so coinciding with that, I was in your stream not too long ago, and you were talking about, what, like, you weren't going to get the new Harry Potter game, which was recently announced. It was announced at the PS5 showcase maybe a month ago now. And that you were kind of thinking about putting the Harry Potter games down as part of your stream rotation. So I kind of want to give you the floor, let you talk about, what your feelings are, why you are coming to this conclusion. Kind of let you have your time, talk about what you want to talk about, and then I want to ask some questions, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
For sure. I appreciate that. Let me preface everything that I'm about to say with saying that I'm a very privileged individual. I'm a cisgender white man. I don't know what goes into, having to deal with transphobia on a daily basis. It's not something that affects me personally because I'm not somebody who identifies as trans. However, I have so many friends and loved ones and people in my life that identify as trans or have gone through a transition of some sort. And over the months that it's been happening, that J.K. Rowling is just continuously doubling down on this transphobia nonsense to the point that she now has a book coming out, or maybe is out soon, that literally has a cisgender white man as dressing as a woman attacking people. It's just these all piled onto my back, and it's gotten to a point that I just don't feel comfortable showcasing Harry Potter games on stream anymore to people who could be, impressionable eyes out there. There are people, I have mods who are trans. I have people who check my stream regularly who are trans, and luckily they understand that I'm somebody they can consider an ally in this. But I just can't continue to give free marketing and publicity to a franchise that's owned by a bigot. And I've gotten so sick of it, and I can't support it anymore. Right now, I made an announcement on my Twitter not that long ago about taking an indefinite break from these games, which I love. I love these games wholeheartedly. And as I've talked about earlier in the show, these are games that I've played since I was a kid. These are games that I would love to still continue to play, but it was such an easy decision for me to make. It was just like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, knowing that I didn't have to put out content out there that could be damaging to a whole group of people. And I would do it again in a second. I expressed in the announcement that I was I wouldn't say that I was nervous about it, but I know that at least like roughly 60 to 70% of the people who follow me or have viewed me has seen me dress up in a Harry Potter costume and run a Harry Potter speed run at some kind of event. So I know what people have come to me for. And I asked for them, hey, if you like me for me, I would love for you to still come by and check out my streams and see other marathon runs that I'm doing. But if you don't, that's fine. I would rather have less numbers with the ability to put out content that I'm comfortable with and content that I know my trans loved ones are comfortable with. And it's the right decision. I stand fully behind it. I know there are people out there, especially in the community that I'm part of, Harry Potter speedrunning community. They have made their living that way. They have done it for years. They're going to keep doing it. They haven't told me outright that they're disappointed in what I'm doing. A lot of them have actually supported my view on this, which has been great to hear. And I understand that they are going to continue to do that, and that's fine. But I don't feel comfortable creating content to be viewed by people that, has such a hateful connotation behind it anymore. I can't do it. This Trans Rights Are Magical marathon, which we put on a few weekends ago, it was such a wonderful experience. We got to use these properties, most of which were bought secondhand, so we didn't have to give money directly to J.K. Rowling in order to play these games or properties. We raised almost $700 for Trans Lifeline on an event that had just been created off of a whim by a speedrunner named KonceptioSR, who had came up with the idea after, discussing all of the problems that have come from J.K. Rowling's stances. And we came together, we made all of this money for them, and it just felt so good. And I would never do anything to take away from that. And I don't think me stopping running these games will take away from that. I think what we did that weekend was so good. And maybe if we make this an annual event, I'll pick up these games, I'll dust them off, and I'll run them for something like that again. But I just can't continue to play these games on a daily basis knowing that it could be harmful to somebody. That's where I have to draw the line.
Hey, listen, I think you said it all. I think that one of the things that's really hard is, and I might have said this, I might not have said this in your chat, I might have wanted to wait, that I get really worried about, are we doing something that our friends, our loved ones, right? Are we doing something that they actually care about? Or are we doing something that just makes us feel good about what we're doing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because, problems like, educating people on trans people and who they really are and what their goals are, and that they're not, sexual predators.
Yep.
And they're not rapists or murderers. They're not violent people. By and large, there's violent people in every group of people. At the same time, it's like, I'm very mindful of that. I'm like, okay, what can we do that is actually helpful and productive? My favorite example is there was an airport that was named after a bigot, and they changed the name of the airport. And I was like, okay, nobody gives a shit about the name of the airport.
Yeah.
No one cares about this regional airport, right? People care about ending police brutality. They don't care about the damn airport name.
Right.
Right? The airport's still there. The airport still makes the same amount of money. But the airport gets to pat themselves on the back and said, we did it,
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard you talking about it on your stream, I was worried. I was like, I think that you present yourself in a very easy to understand way. I don't think that your motives are hidden. I don't think that you're a facetious person. I think that from speaking with you before the event that we did, talking with you in your chat, on your stream, watching you stream, you're a very genuine person. I feel like the person that you see on stream is more or less the person that you are, or the person that you get. And I really appreciate that, because I try and be the same way. I'm a lot more blunt and maybe a little more coarse. But, I appreciate that as well. So, I think the big thing is, this is a decision that you're making. And so I really appreciate your resolve to do that.
Yeah, and kind of like what you said with the airport analogy, do I think that me deciding not to play Harry Potter games for the foreseeable future is going to affect J.K. Rowling somehow? Absolutely not. This is a drop in the bucket. She's rich. She's going to make all kinds of money. It's not going to do anything, but I'm not doing it in order to stop, her from making money. I'm doing it just because I want the people around me to feel comfortable. Yeah. And I want to feel comfortable with myself. That's all it comes down to. I want it to be a place that people can comfortably, go in and out of. They don't have to feel like, ooh, there's some, content on the screen that makes me feel a certain way that is uncomfortable. I don't want to make that. I don't want to even have the potential to make that content. I don't think I've made content like that yet, but I don't want there to even be a potential of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally understand. This is a decision that you're making because you want the people around you to feel comfortable, and I totally respect that. I think that, and I know that you're doing this. You just said that you were the head organizer for them. What was the name of the event again? I apologize.
It's a Trans Rights Are Magical marathon.
Trans Rights Are Magical marathon.
Or TRAM.
Right?
We just called it TRAM.
TRAM. Well, that's an actual really good event, right? It's a great way to promote awareness. You're promoting awareness for an issue with this event. And you're raising money to something that's very important, right? Because transgender people in this country and other countries have a disproportionately high suicide rate. And so lifelines like these are very important. And so this is something that I think, to balance your I don't want to call it a Harry Potter fast, but I'm drawing a blank on what else I would call it. So I understand, retiring Harry Potter as a thing that you do on your stream, and I think you actually really are doing something. You're doing something both. You're sending a message that's like, hey, people around me, you are safe. I value you as people and you're safe. And then you do something saying, hey, I'm not all talk. I'm from Missouri. That's the show me state. I'm going to show you what I'm about. And you do the event, right? So I really think that this is like the best message you can send. So, and I wanted to highlight it on the show because I really liked your whole deal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I even put in the post where I talked about taking an indefinite break that, one, I do hope that we continue to make TRAM a annual event, and then I would be happy to kind of dust off the games offline, run them again for the marathon, in order to raise money. And I think, and I'm still kind of toying with this and figuring it out, but until I get more of a backlog of speedrun games where I have, like 5 or 6 games that I feel comfortable with submitting to marathons, I'll probably continue to submit a game or two here and there, because running them in a marathon setting, using those games to raise money for a charity that matters, I think is a net positive. So I think for now, continue to, submit 1 or 2 here and there until I have more games that I feel more comfortable with, and then kind of phase them out entirely, unless it's for, Trans Rights Are Magical or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to also do a quick plug. We are running out of time. I want to wrap up soon.
Sure.
But I want to talk about your podcast. You have a podcast. It's called Handheld Zero.
I do, yes. Yes, I do.
And I'm going to, just before you say anything about it, right, I'm going to tell the people what's up.
You tell them.
Some really good episodes. It's kind of a shorter fare. So
yes,
I've enjoyed them because I'm a very busy person. I also get into situations where I'm working and I am going to be doing something for like 20-ish minutes, like 25 minutes. Like I have something that I have to really dial in for 20 minutes. I really value content that is digestible in one sitting where I don't have to get up and come back later. I'm saying this as a human being who spends his free time making hour-long world record history documentaries. So I am aware that I am the problem with the world. But I like to consume things in one sitting. I don't like to get up and stop and pause it and come back. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I don't have the pacings all off and whatever. So I really appreciate that every one of these episodes, except for one, and I'll let it go, is under a half hour.
Yeah, that was the first one, too. That's not under a half hour. That was me getting my bearings, so.
Yes, no, he's refined the process. Some of the ones on here that I really recommend, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, DS was a great episode. That was a good one. And the other one what was the one that I vibed with, man? Was it for the Super Mario Brothers Deluxe for the Game Boy Color? You did that one.
I did, yeah. That was my second one.
Yeah, I really vibe with those two. Check them all out. I'm going to let you talk about it now and tell the people what it is. But I'm telling you, go check this podcast out. It's on Apple, so don't tell me you can't get it. It's up wherever you find your podcasts. But go ahead and tell the people about your podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Like CJ said, it's called Handheld Zero. The concept is that I'm, the zero because I'm not, a famous person. The concept behind it is I check out a handheld game that I'm not super familiar with. So you're not going to hear me talk about, Pokemon Red because I've played thousands upon thousands of hours in that game. So I know it like the back of my hand. I'm going to pick up a game or a game for a system that I've never even played and I'm going to get my firsthand impressions on it in the context of a modern view. So, for example, one of the ones that sticks out to my head is I did an episode about Grand Theft Auto Vice City stories for the PSP, which is, I never owned a PSP. I barely have ever played a PSP, and I've played GTA games since then. So viewing a GTA game under the lens of, all right, well, I've played 4 and 5, these masterpieces of video games. How does this stack up compared to later iterations? I make comparisons like that. And I just kind of talk about the story of the game, the development, the gameplay, just kind of break it down step by step, give a final impression at the end. I do a review system where I, do it based out of cartridges, like, handheld cartridges and things like that. And we talk, we do that every 2 weeks. And I do an episode. I haven't repeated a system yet. So I've done Game Boy Color game. I've done a Game Boy Advance game, DS, Switch, PlayStation Portable, Game Gear. So we'll see. I think it's going to end up being a season podcast as well. So I'll probably do somewhere between 8 and 10 episodes, take a break, pick it back up, because beating a game every 2 weeks you've never played before can be quite a bit. So especially when you don't have time to do other things.
Well, you just got to get the, the Game & Watch.
That's
coming out, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, it's unique because, like I said, I do any game that is made for any handheld system ever. So, like I talked about, I did an OG Game Boy game. I've done a Switch game. Whatever I can get it to tie into, as long as I can play it in a handheld format, then I'll talk about it.
Awesome. All right. So, I do want to wrap up. Thank you so much for being on. Honestly, you were a terrific guest. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This was a joy.
I'm glad that I could make it a joy. If you liked listening to the podcast today, I've got some great news, because Conception is a being on the internet. You can find him. You can find him on Twitter. His username is Conception. That is Conception with a K _2. So Conception like the word. Instead, it's a K _2.
On Twitter, it is very important that you have that underscore, because the one without an underscore is an unsavory account. So make sure
get that underscore in.
Get that underscore in.
Alrighty. Twitch, no underscore. Conception, again, that's Conception with a K2. You can check out the Handheld Zero podcast. I googled it, and it is on Apple Podcasts. What else we got here? What is this? Backtrack FM is on here. What do we got here? Some other, lots of places. You can find the podcast wherever you want. It comes up right in Google Podcasts for me.
Yeah, so, Google Podcast. It should be on Stitcher if you use Stitcher. Podbean. It's on Spotify as well. If you prefer to listen through Spotify, it should be on there.
If you can find this podcast, you can find that podcast, because we're on all the same places. So, any other things that you'd like to plug really quick before we wrap up?
No, not you did all my personal plugs, so I'll just kind of reiterate that trans rights are human rights, Black Lives Matter, defund the police, all that good stuff.
Free Tibet.
That too.
I like throwing that one in. It's kind of like a little zinger at the end. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening this week. Tune in next week. Again, another great episode. We have a bunch of great episodes lined up back to back to back. I promise there's not a sour apple in the bunch. Tune in. Thank you for all the downloads on Spotify and Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, all the listens on the YouTube. You've been great. Share it with your friends. Get the word out. If you have any suggestions for people you'd like to see on the podcast, leave me a comment on the YouTube video or post in the Discord. There's now a Discord channel in the Speed Docs Discord for Speedrun Insider where you can tell me which guest you'd like to see on the podcast or anyone that you'd like to see back on in the future. Once again, I'm CJitsallGewd. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll get you next time.